Hi, it's Paul Banis of GreatDad.com, and thank you very much for joining either the podcast or the YouTube version of the podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you took just a second to subscribe either on your podcast app or in YouTube. It doesn't really do anything. It's not going to send you any emails. It's just going to show up more often on your feed, and it does me a lot of good in terms of getting more exposure for this work I do to support dads. I'd also like to invite you to come to my page, GreatDad.com/go, if you'd like to discuss more about any of the issues that we are covering within the podcast, especially if there's any way I can help you to be a sounding board in your own struggles to be a dad and to be there for your family. So take a look at that. It also includes a link to my course on gratitude, where at GreatDad.com/gratitude with a offer to take that course for free. So see you in a second. Hey, it's Paul Banis of GreatDad.com, and I'm here with my weekly series talking to dads about modern fatherhood. And I'm excited today to talk to Odeani McBean. Welcome, Odeani.
Oh man, thanks for having me. I appreciate you.
Yeah, so I was so excited to see your profile in one of the services that we both use to help find other guests, because you've got your own podcast, the Mindful Dad podcast, which I
Yep.
check that out. That's worth taking a look at. But just because you've really given yourself over to coaching dads, and as somebody who's been doing this for a while myself, I'm excited to see that, especially younger guys getting into this work and supporting men through fatherhood. Because as much as if you're in it, you feel like there's a lot of people doing it. The reality is, I think a lot of men out there are alone in this. We
Yes.
don't communicate very well. There's a lot more focus on moms than there are on dads. So all this is really good stuff. So why don't we start there? Is what got you into this thing? Because you didn't come out of like school
Yeah.
thinking I'm going to be a dad coach, right?
Yeah, no, that's so true. Once again, thank you for having me. I'm very
Sure,
grateful.
yeah.
So I was always like in entrepreneur spirit, right?
Hmm.
And so what I was working on a couple years ago prior to this was an app to help people who are dating each other to
Oh
help
yeah.
them better, like date each other better, basically. And so I was like in this little container with entrepreneurs, and the lady was like, "What are you working on?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm working on this dating app thing." And I could just tell she was like not impressed. And she's like, "It sounds cool." And I'm like, "What?" And she's like, she gave me the best advice. She's like, "If you really want to make an impact, think back to what's the most difficult thing you've been through as an adult." Like, she's like, "Do you got it?" I was like, "Yes." And she's like, "Whatever that thing is, build a business around that." And because chances are there are thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that are going through that same thing. And I'm telling you, I just right there just dropped every concept I thought I was going to be pursuing in business and immediately turned to fatherhood because, prior to that, I had been in this custody battle for like 3 years, and it was very emotionally, financially taxing. And I felt so alone during that time. I felt so undervalued. And I said, you know what? This is what I have to do, right? I have to help dads who feel alone. I have to help dads who feel like their role is not valued by the closest ones to them or even society. And not for nothing, I also have to help fathers who feel like um, they're kind of lost, right? Because, like, for me, my father, I'm Jamaican, and he was, just doing what he was taught. And it's a
Hmm.
totally different style of parenting.
Yeah.
There's no emotional connection, there's no vulnerability. And I'm like, I don't
Well,
want
it's
to
a
parent.
generational
Yeah,
thing too. Yeah.
exactly. And I'm like, I don't want to parent like that anymore,
Yeah.
because I was just unconsciously parenting like that. And this was all around a time where everything just came to me like, you got to change the way you are with your children, and you had to show people how to do it. And from that day on, I just dove straight in. I created a journal because I'm someone who I journal every day, I meditate every day, and I'm like, I know men, majority of them are not doing this.
Right.
But this is such a powerful resource to do for self-awareness. So that's why the journal 365 Dad Journal came about.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I,
we'll talk about that in a few minutes.
yeah,
I'm curious first about how you, I guess how you see fatherhood,
mhm.
and I guess my experiences is when you're in it, you're so lost in it, you don't have time to really do that kind of reflection. And men in general, we this whole idea of vulnerability or getting too in touch with your feelings, we kind of like push that away
Yeah,
because we're told not to, or because we haven't yet tapped into that.
yep.
And how do you, I guess, how do you see dads as going through that, or what's the value of being more in touch with,
Yeah.
mindfulness in the day to day and being closer in rather than nose down, get the work done, pay the bills.
I'm glad you mentioned this because I just on my podcast I just spoke about dads needing to balance masculine and feminine energies,
Hmm.
right? And I on the podcast I said, the word feminine, the word masculine is just a label for energetic traits. But society would have you thinking it's gender based, right?
Right. Yeah.
Lean into this side heavier because you're a man, or, and I say all that to say everything you just mentioned are masculine traits, right? I gotta get it, I gotta provide, I gotta protect. But we have both, right? Because I always tell dads we're all things. Like you can be that guy, and you can also be the guy that is self-aware. You can also be the guy that's compassionate, right? That's the whole being, not the box that society likes to trap us in. So once dads start tapping into self-awareness, even the idea that we're too busy to do that, that's a state of mind, right? That's a masculine state of mind. So even the idea that, oh, I don't have time, you do, right?
Mhm.
Even if it's, and that's what I teach dads how to cultivate these practices. I tell them we don't got to go for the home run right away, right? So if you dedicate 5, 10 minutes in the morning, in the afternoon, during your lunch break to these practices, you realize that a lot of things you're doing in parenting, you don't even realize where it's coming from. And that's the benefit for me. It's like I finally am able to now sit back and say, whoa, I cared so much that my son's teacher did not even look at me during parent teacher conference. I cared so much that bothered me so much, but it was because my dad didn't make that type of effort. And now my ego wants that to be known, right? But that's important to know that. So now it's like, I'm not going around mad at the world because I'm undervalued, right? It's giving me opportunity to know where that's coming from.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's talk more a little bit more about the value of that, because I think for the idea of being vulnerable, or is
Yeah,
vulnerable meaning being weak, or being
right.
in touch with your emotions, if they are there somewhere dug deep, or what value does that have in your life? I mean, everybody, like a lot of people are telling us to do that, but
Right.
it might not be apparent to a lot of men why that
Yep,
would even be a good thing at the end of the day if it pulls you
exactly.
away from your main task of trying to put food on the table.
Yeah. So I think when we talk about vulnerability, right, and emotions and why it's important, I think we have to look at parenting as a whole experience, right? And not just the experience that we're taught. So, for example, before I got into this type of work, I didn't take the time to do these things for myself. And I had realized that the bond with my son, since I started implementing these practices, is just unbelievable now. Like like my son and I always, our bond was always like this. But
Hmm.
the moment that I started to self-reflect, the moment that I started to write about how I feel, him and I just instantly became closer. I can't even explain to you, right? Like the my son said something to me last year. This is the best way to sum this up. I'm talking to my son in the summertime last year, and he's just telling me how he feels about, his parents and everything, and loves his mom. She does a great job. And he goes, "You know what, Dad? You know what I really like love about you?" And I go, "What's that?" And he goes, "Your understanding." Right? And he goes, "You're very understanding." And
Wow.
that is like and I could never tell my dad that, like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And for him to tell me that I'm understanding, that is just it. It takes away from what everything you thought you needed to be as a dad, how you need to show up as a dad versus what your kids actually need. And I think this type of work separates that for you. You're able to now see, like, I'm not parenting from the playbook. I'm parenting intuitively. I'm parenting from what my kids actually need from me. And I would say that's the biggest value in this type of work is obviously it's you're going to benefit from it as well, but just the ripple effect of your children, your family, the people around you. So for him to tell me that I'm understanding, I'm like, this is paying off. Like I know it is. You know what I mean? Because I'm not just jumping to conclusions. I'm not just going at his throat the minute
Right.
he messes up. And now I'm
Right.
asking the questions. Before I wasn't asking the questions, right? Now
Mm.
I'm like, okay, tell me about this. Where was your mind frame when you made this choice? Where was your mind frame when you said this thing? Before I didn't even care to know the mind frame,
And
right?
he's 13, so he's moving to that area where you'd think instead of connecting, he'd be pushing you more away.
That's I just told
What a
somebody.
gift.
You know what? This is I'm so glad you mentioned this. I just told someone this. I'm like, yo, my son is getting to that age where, the girls come in, he wants to hang out with his friends more now. But I'm like, ironically, we're getting closer as
Yeah.
he's tapping into his own emotional intelligence. And I know that's because of the work I'm doing on myself, the work I'm doing to break cycles.
Yeah. I love the fact that you're willing to say that you're still doing that work because as
Uh,
coaches, I think a lot of people look at us coaches like, if you don't have the perfect family and the perfect life and everything, why would I want to be coach with you? But I mean, as coaches, we don't really give advice on how to live your life, and we are all learning and imperfect at the same time. So, when with your coaching clients with other dads that you're working at, what seems to be their hot buttons? Do they usually come with you to
yeah.
you because there's an issue, like I'm struggling with my teenager, or I'm fighting with my spouse about parenting styles, or do they come, or maybe it's a mixture of the two, they come to you proactively saying, my kid's 2 or 3 years old. I want to get ahead of this. I want to be the best dad I can be. Help me learn
Mhm.
how to be that father that I'd rather be rather than following the old playbook, as you said.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I realize there are two hot points for people who I work with, dads who I work with. The first hot point is they feel like they have a really difficult time achieving their own personal goals while still being as like the best dad they can be,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
They feel like they don't have the necessary structure and tools to, go start that business but still be great dad, right? Go thrive at work but still be present dad. They also feel like they don't even know how to practice mindfulness, right? They don't like, what is that? Is it just meditation? I mean, is it just so? And the third thing, which is, I think, the deep thing, a lot of dads come to me because they have what's called dad guilt. And this is
Mm.
a narrative, but it's a real thing that a lot of dads face. They always feel like they're not doing enough. They always feel like they feel bad because they didn't do this, or this didn't turn out the way they had hoped. A lot of dads come to me because they want to essentially feel valued in their role, but they also want to feel some type of self-worth, which
Wow.
you would never think, right? Like I would have never thought this was a thing. Like obviously, when I'm doing my research on these topics, I see, 7 out of 10 dads feel like they're they're undervalued in their role. Like, I see stuff like that, but sometimes when you look at the internet, it's not the same as when somebody is on a Zoom call with you and telling you, I don't feel like my role is taken as serious, because I'm a man, you know, um, and that's the thing. And I would say to put it all into a bow, a lot of my audience, they're on the verge of, it's like they're almost like afraid to show these sides of vulnerability, but they want to. You have some dads who are they're just going to be stuck in their way. Like
Yeah.
it is what it is. They're like, no, the men's job is to be rough, and it's the men's
Right, right.
job to provide tough love. Like those dads, like some of them will never change. But I realize a lot of people will come to me. They're kind of transitioning from that. They want to be more patient. They may raise their voice, but they want to apologize. But they don't even really know how to do that, if that makes sense.
Well, I get that. I mean, I think a lot. It's hard. I mean, I remember early on on our kids were little, and getting working up the courage to actually apologize to your tween or your early teenager that you made the wrong call, and you either yelled at them for something that wasn't their fault, or maybe you blew up when you should have been the calm person in the room or whatever. And that at first feels really like, am I giving up all my power in this relationship? And then you realize what kind of power do you want to have with a 9-year old? I mean, you kind of have all the power to
Yeah,
begin with. What
you're
kind
right.
of bond do you want longer term? How do you want them to view you? Do you want them to just view you as an older, more powerful person, or somebody who's has this longer
Yeah,
connection?
that's true. I listen. One of the biggest mistakes I think I made and my father made, in our relationship is I didn't start understanding his type of love until I was like in my 20s.
Hmm.
Like it took me like 27 years to actually be like, no, my dad does love me. Like, you know what I mean? He's just showing it in these ways. And it's because when I was a kid, I needed it to be different. Right? And he wasn't able to do that because it's just how he was, how his dad raised him. And that's something I tell my clients all the time. Like, I'm like, you don't want your kids to like wait till they're 30 to finally realize like, oh, I get it. Right? You want to show them in the ways that they can comprehend right now.
Yeah.
What I mean? Be present, have a conversation, you know, say I love you. Even if nothing's happening, like just say it. Little things
Yeah.
like that. Because now they're gonna know, and it's gonna change the trajectory of how they are as adults.
Yeah. It makes me think that there are a lot of different there are a lot of different things that you can do to be close to your kids, and loyalty, and the fact that I had a dad who I saw twice a year, and then I had a close relationship with him based on the fact that he was always there at the end of a phone call. But the part that I missed was the everyday being there, body and soul with me, and living through a lot of the experiences. And when I think of the value of those two things, yes, the loyalty part. I mean, he could have walked away and never talked to my mom again. It was a different time there. It might have been more easy to
Yeah.
avoid, but he stayed, present or continuous. But I miss that mindfulness everyday part, which I got to think that has a lot of primacy in the relationship building and how you think of that relationship long term.
Yeah. I mean, even for myself, I'm a co-parent. So, like I'll give
Definitely
you a good,
struggle to, yeah.
yeah, I'll give you a good example. So like I see my children like half the month, right?
Hmm.
And my son is a big time basketball player, right? So there are times when I'm tired. It's not my weekend. It's not my day. Like it's maybe like, Mondays and Thursdays during the week I have him. Maybe there's a Wednesday and I see he has a game at 8:30 that's an hour away from me.
Yeah.
On a Wednesday, it would be so easy for me to say, good luck.
Yeah.
Let me know, and then if the game is on Thursday, I'll be there type of stuff. But it's like, no, like I'm gonna get in the car and I'm gonna drive an hour to go to this basketball game, and not for nothing, so that I'm present.
Yeah.
Right. I was talking to a dad one time, a teammate of his, and the dad is like, I was like, oh, I'll see you next weekend at the tournament. He's like, oh, no, you won't see me. You'll see the mom. It's not my weekend. And then it hit me, and nothing like wrong. It's just how we
Right. Yeah.
operate.
Everybody's got to do what they got to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it hit me like this whole time. I didn't even think about that. Like, I'm just on autopilot. Doesn't care. I don't care whose weekend it is. Like, I'm at the tournament. You know what I mean? But these are the little things that I think, like you say, will have an impact. The fact that I'm showing up even when technically it's not my time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I struggle with like judging. Everybody's got to do what they've got to do, and
Yeah,
God knows it's a hostile world out there for trying to hold your
for
finances
sure.
together and everything else. So no criticism over people who are working
No,
2 or 3 jobs to do stuff together, but the people who do have the flexibility, I mean, like in your point,
right. This is
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
You do have some choices and how you parent and how much time and energy you put into it. So let's talk a little bit about the book because I thank you very much for sending it to me. 365 Dad, and I think on the website you got to make sure you spell out
No, yeah, yeah,
365dad.com. You
yeah.
do a little bit too early to get 365dad.com unless you want to pay a couple $10,000. But you've got it's a journal, a very active journal with prompts for every different day. They're not predated, so you're not starting on
Yep,
January 1st and expected to make it through every
yep.
one of them. You date them as you go. So I guess you could extend this into
Purposely
two or
done.
three
I
years
didn't want people
depending.
to feel too pressured.
Right, right.
Oh, I missed February 14th. Oh, I missed February 20th.
Yeah, like
Now,
not worth going on because I missed the all of
yeah.
February. I remember doing that when I was a kid with journals. You
Hmm.
very active for a while, then you drop them. So how do you want dads to use this? I mean, is it ideally used in conjunction with a coaching relationship, or can people use this on their own to?
Yeah, yeah. When I created this journal, the vision I had was, for dads to use it on their own time. Obviously, I incorporate it when I'm coaching, right?
Mhm.
But if you get a journal and you're not doing any coaching, the part of it is for you to sit down 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and you could even flip to any. There's 4 pillars, right? So there's mindfulness prompts, there are self-reflection prompts, there are prompts about how to build a community around you, which a lot of dads, you spoke on it earlier, we're just kind of to ourselves a lot of times, especially with adversity. And then there's prompts for strengthening bonds and strengthening relationships with your children. And my vision was for a dad to be able to say, what in these areas, what do I need? Like what's bothering me the most right now? And then you can just flip to any prompt. You can do it linear if you want, but just look at those symbols. If you want to self-reflect, just go to a self-reflection prompt. If you want to
Yeah, they have little. That's what these little.
yeah,
Yeah,
right.
little
Each
little
symbol
icon.
is for the different pillar.
Hmm.
And I would say the biggest thing about this journal is from personal experience with this journal and journaling in general, there's always like a third layer to whatever you think the issue is. And journaling has done that for me, right? So, I may think I want to do this or I'm reacting like this in fatherhood because of this. Until you start clearing out your mind, you'll realize this is just the top of the onion. This is like the first layer.
Yeah.
Journaling always gets you to that second and third layer, like the root issue. And I think that's the best thing that journal can do for a dad is to get them to truly get to the root core of what's on their mind.
And why do you think journaling does that versus just ruminating in your mind as you commute home, whatever?
Yeah, so for me at least, and they always, talk about the benefits of writing things down, but the thing about the difference between ruminating and putting it on paper is that when you are ruminating, that can happen for an hour. You know what I mean? That can
Yeah.
take you to now that's what we tap into the mindfulness things that like you don't want to get too attached to the thoughts, right? Because now you're like even suffering more in adversity because now
Hmm.
you're like clinging to what you're thinking about.
Right.
I just think writing it down gives you it's like a safe space. It allows you to express yourself. You're not the pages are like this, so you don't have to worry about going on for 30 minutes about this.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of dads and men in general. They just need something that they can. It's easy, it's quick, right? But with continued practice, the benefits start showing up. And a lot of times with work like this, the benefits show up. You didn't even realize it. Sometimes something happens in parenting, and you're like, oh wait, the last time this happened, I reacted totally different.
Hmm.
Right. And then now you go back and it's because of the work I'm doing on myself, you know?
So how much are people expected to write? I mean, you've got a full page
Yeah.
here, so you got a lot of space in the room. Are people doing like one sentence? Or are they trying? Are you advising to really write down as much as you can in really tiny mouse print? How do you
Yeah.
how do you do a journal? I guess in my
This is a great question. I'll tell you why. When I first started printing these, I was giving them to a very close friends of mine, just to like, hey, test this out. You know,
yeah.
tell me your experience. And I'll never forget. I'm flawed, right? We're all flawed. So I went over to my friend's house and he's like, man, I love this journal. He's like, I'm writing. He has twin daughters. On top of that, he's in a blended family and he has so two other daughters, right? And that he provides for. And he goes, man, I love this. And I go, let me see. Like, I don't want to see what you're writing about, but what prompt you really like the most. Show me. And he flips the journal open and there was probably like 5 sentences. I said I'm flawed because initially I laughed. Like, I'm like, dude, I'm like, you're not using it. Like, you know what I mean? But then probably like 20 minutes in, we were talking about something else. I said, you know what? I apologize. Right. Because here's someone who he's never put down his thoughts on paper ever. So you have to start from somewhere. Right. Something is better than nothing. So I said, yo, I want to apologize to you earlier for like joking around that you only wrote 5 sentences. Right. So I said, if you wrote those 5 sentences and you actually feel he genuinely felt that that was a good experience for him, then that's all that matters. So now when I may do like a workshop or something, I get this all the time. Am I supposed to write the whole time? I give two advice. I said two pieces of advice. The first one is set a timer for 5 minutes. You know, see what happens. If the timer goes off and you still have room, keep writing, or just do what feels good for you. So if that's a whole page, if that's 3 sentences, it doesn't matter. So I would say that's how I would answer that question, because I know there's a market for men who have never picked up a pen, and a whole page can be daunting, right? So if you're just writing 5 sentences, I love it. If you're writing a whole page, I love it. Whatever you
Great.
do to get to empty it.
Yeah, is there something liberating in that? I think because I remember as being a young man and yeah, dating women they were always like saying, "Well, how do you really feel? I want to know how you feel." And I was like, I'm just feeling. I don't know I don't even know what you're even talking about. I don't know what you want from me.
Yeah.
And it always felt like such a lot of pressure versus maybe if you're doing this on your own, maybe you can give yourself the permission to think through what is the question here? I mean, it's not like a prompt like write down your feelings like right now, am I scared or sad or whatever.
Yeah.
They're a lot more specific. How important is that your romantic partner possesses qualities that support you as a father, for example? That's
Hmm.
one that's I think very interesting in terms of, especially if you're dating and you're looking at potential candidates and you're thinking this one's really pretty and makes a lot of money, but she hates kids. I mean, is that a
Right.
good choice good choice for you? And maybe you should be thinking through a little bit of that as you develop your profile. If
Hmm.
being a father is really important. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And I wanted the questions to be very not, cookie cutter.
yeah,
The funny thing about these prompts are, I'm very proud of this in the chat GPT era. Every single prompt it doesn't matter what page you turn to. There was a moment in my fatherhood experience that inspired the prompt.
oh yeah, okay,
You know what I mean? So, I mean, any prompt you turn to, like
yeah,
even the guided meditations, I lead guided meditations all the time, so I put those in there. But any prompt you turn to, I can, like a clockwork, I can tell you exactly what was happening in my time as a dad, or my time with my relationship with my own dad, that made me write that prompt. And
yeah.
I just know so many people relate.
Yeah, great. Well, Deanie, it's really interesting talking to you. I really appreciate the work you're doing. It's great. You know, when I created GreatDad.com now almost 20 years ago, there were full of dads doing
Yeah.
blogs of any type. I mean, just blogs. I mean, we literally
Yeah.
we all knew each other because it was such a rare thing. And it's so great to see younger guys getting in this area just because I just think it's so important. It's important for us as men to have a deeper experience with our kids, but it's so important for obviously for the kids. But it's just selfishly, examining your life and what's going on. It's just a great thing. So
Yeah.
people can find you at 365dad.com, and then the book is 365 Dad Journal. I assume you
Yep.
can get this on Amazon or
So right now it's sold on my website,
yeah.
THREESIX, spelled out, 365dad.com. But very soon it will be on Amazon. I caved in. I was like, you know what? I'm going to put it on Amazon. I wanted to
Yeah,
keep it,
yeah, I know.
homebound.
Yeah, they kind of.
But yeah, but you can get it on my website. You can, if you visit my YouTube channel, Odeani, just type in Odeani, you'll see me there talking about all this stuff. I have links everywhere. And I also really wanted to take a moment to admire you, say thank you as well, because when I started this type of work, my goal was I just kept millennial dads, because I
Mhm.
didn't think men who are a little older would even find this stuff important. So when I came across your channel and I saw we basically are preaching the same message,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like, I love that,
yeah,
So I love to see, men who are older than me that are making use of wanting to go deeper and
yeah.
farther,
Well, I
So,
appreciate that.
so I
Thank you
want to
very
say
much.
thank you, man. I
Yeah,
love your platform.
yeah. Thank you. All right. Paul Vance, GreatDad.com. You can find my coaching offerings at GreatDad.com/go. And I've got a free course for podcast listeners on gratitude, which I think is a really basic building block to a lot of happiness and better relationships. So check that out.
Mhm.
Until next time, stay strong. Thank you, Odini.
Thank you. I appreciate you.